Now, Doctor, we have grappled with the UFO phenomenon for over 70 years, and, before Roswell, really. And there's always been rumors and questions and everything else, but it took a very different turn over the last few years, where there seems to be something there in the U.S. government that at least knows more about this than what they're telling everybody else. Now, I wouldn't want to come to any sort of conclusions about it other than there just does seem to be a signal among the noise. Now, in your experience with the UFO phenomenon, looking at many, many different accounts and looking for patterns among these accounts and trying to glean what you can from the aggregate as opposed to the individual accounts, which can be problematic, but if you're looking at a lot of them, you can look for patterns. What were your conclusions on that? What did you see?
Well, I guess this goes back from, I joined National Institute for Discovery Science, which was an organization funded by Robert Bigelow back in 1996. We spent 8 years focusing on the UFO phenomenon and investigating sort of boots on the ground, dozens and dozens of cases. And then we sort of moved into the OSAP program in 2008, which started through the Defense Intelligence Agency, $22 million program. We hired about 50 people in order to do that program. And the exclusive intent of that program was to investigate UFOs and also to determine whether or not UFOs constituted a threat to the United States. So I guess the short answer to your question is obviously we do have gobs and gobs of data regarding UFO performance. We have gobs of data regarding UFO technology and or regarding technological performance. What we don't have a lot of is what is the agenda. There is definitely a very highly adept technological force out there that has been interacting closely with humans for the last 75 years. And if you look at Jacques Vallée's work, then you're really going back centuries and possibly beyond that. But regarding the agenda of the UFO phenomenon, we're still up in the air regarding agenda. But I will say that my experience that began with the National Institute for Discovery Science, investigating UFOs on Skinwalker Ranch and investigating UFOs out there, there is an element of deception that runs through the UFO phenomenon. In my experience, we were hunting something on Skinwalker Ranch that was definitely nuts and bolts UFOs, cloaking a panoply of other very weird phenomena that seem to go hand in hand with the nuts and bolts craft. So we are talking about deception. I think there's a thread of deception that runs through the entire interaction of the UFO phenomenon with humans, going back to 1940s, 1950s, where observers were able to see nuts and bolts objects sometimes pretty close up, but there was never any interaction between these objects and humans. There was a lot of phases of this interaction with humans over the decades that includes everything from the so-called contactees in the 50s through the so-called abduction phenomena in the 1970s and 1980s. And if you look at the different patterns that emerge, you do see an element of deception. There does seem to be a concerted effort on the part of this phenomenon to prevent accumulation of scientific data. A good example of that is right now on this planet, there are probably 6.4 billion smartphones, each one of which has a very high definition camera. A lot of them have high definition cameras, but yet we're still struggling with very blurry sort of long distance photographs. That should not be happening with something that is not actively preventing the accumulation of data. So I guess the short answer to your question is a technology that is engaging in deception.